Welcome to War Room Impeachment. It's Monday, the 4th of November, the year of our Lord 2019. This is episode 16 now of the War Room Impeachment show. We've got Jason Miller here, senior Trump 2016 communications advisor.
Boom.
Got it right this time. Stephen K. Bannon, the former Trump campaign CEO and former chief strategist to the White House, joining us down the line from New York City here on the John Fredericks Radio Network. I'm Raheem Kassan. We've also got a wonderful guest for you this hour. I want to throw it over to Jason and Steve to intro our guests. Steve.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to have two guests today. We're doing a little something different. The reason is so much pressing news over the weekend and today, and I want to bring in a very special guest, the deputy campaign manager of the 2016 campaign, and somebody, along with Jason Miller, who was in the war room on the 14th floor at Trump Tower that ran the operation. Dave Bossie. Dave's also a renowned grassroots leader at Citizens United, been in this cause and this fight for 25 or 30 years. But the reason we wanted Dave on today, he is the last person to really run a large-scale investigative apparatus that led to the impeachment of our president, and that was back in the 1990s. Under the leadership of Speaker Newt Gingrich, Dave was the head guy running the Clinton investigation. Dave, thank you very much for joining us in the War Room today.
No, thanks for having me.
So, Dave, can you put us in perspective? The reason we want to get you on this morning to kick off the week is that this is now a formal process. This has now engulfed the city of Washington. It's all everybody's talking about. CNN's entire website, I think, was dedicated to the persecution of President Trump. Can you walk through exactly what's going on? Can you put in perspective what you guys did in the 90s and how it compares to what Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi are doing?
Well, it's a great question, Steve. Look, everybody just needs to understand that this is a political process. I know you guys talk about this a lot, but this is not a legal process. This is not a court of law. This is a court of public opinion. This is where Democrats use whatever cudgels they have against our president, and we must defend him from it. And that's what this is about. So to put that in perspective, back in the 90s, we launched after many years, and you got to remember, there were 7 independent counsel investigations. Ken Starr was just one. Janet Reno, Bill Clinton's attorney general, appointed 7 different people to investigate 7 different matters, from cabinet member corruption to Bill Clinton's corruption. So there was a lot to work with there. There was a lot of corruption. And I led the investigation from the Whitewater investigation in the Senate, which began in 1995, all the way through, and I went over to the House to lead those House investigations that culminated with President Clinton's impeachment. So we had hundreds of staff, hundreds. We didn't have 5 or 6 people. I had staff of over 100 people, almost all of them lawyers, that were running this investigation. We broke it down into different areas of investigation.
By the way, you had hundreds of people on your staff, and most of those were lawyers. You were a fireman at the time, correct?
Yeah. I was a non-lawyer, having a bunch of Harvard guys work for me. It went over very well, I'll be honest with you. So you know what? I knew what I was doing. I was the chief investigator, and the proof ended up being in the pudding. We were very successful at what we did. We did a lot of criminal referrals to the Department of Justice, and we took down some of the biggest names, in the Clinton era. So we took down a sitting governor of Arkansas. It's the reason that Mike Huckabee became governor, is because Jim Guy Tucker was indicted off of one of our criminal referrals and convicted and taken out of office. So we there was a lot of things that happened there, and people forget 20 plus years later. But let's focus on today, because what we have today, Steve, and it's very similar. I hark back to our campaign days. It's a small group of people, and a small group of people who are the right folks in the right places can do a very good job. However, this is something that requires a small army, and we need what I call a pack of killers. When I woke up every day in the firehouse in the 1990s, I went up against guys named Carville and Bagala and Stephanopoulos and Kendall and Fabiani and Sherburne, people that are household names 25 years later. We are not fighting, in my opinion, my humble opinion. We need to put together a pack of killers. The president does, because he can't do it all by himself. And I know he feels very comfortable doing it by himself. And if the Russia investigation is any indication, he's very good, and he won that by himself, in essence, with a couple of people and his Twitter followers. But I don't know that this is the same. Actually, I know it's not the same, because impeachment is a completely different animal. Because that is the first thing in the history books 50 years from now that historians will be writing about your presidency. And that's something that we would love to try to not have happen to this president. This is a political tool. That is all it is.
How does this, there you had hundreds, you had 7 special counsels, you had hundreds of investigations, you had reams of evidence and people under oath giving testimony. How does this, what's happened to date, and now you see the president, we're going to get into both the whistleblower, Jason Rahimi, we're going to get into the whistleblower, and we're going to get into, Dave, in this segment, also about the president now saying there shouldn't be any witnesses. What's the difference with what shift is running versus the last time we impeached a president?
Well, look, when we were running the investigations leading up to impeachment, leading up to the actual Judiciary Committee's impeachment operation, after Ken Starr delivered his report, okay, there's a lot of similarities. When I was in charge, I didn't give Henry Waxman and the Democrats a chance to breathe. I knocked them to the ground, and we stood on their necks. That's what we did. It's very similar to what they are doing to us in return right now. That's why people, and that's what Bill Clinton went out and did. He told everyone, this is political. There's nothing to this. I'm just trying to do the job of the American people. And he focused on the positive, and he focused on his accomplishments and what his agenda was. That's what part of this is, the media plan. Part of it is the political operation, and that's something that that we've struggled with I'm not in the White House, but as a White House, as an administration, and as those of us defending.
So
we've
Dave,
had trouble with those things.
Dave, this is Jason. Let me jump in for a moment here. So this is a point that I want to drill down on about the mainstream media and essentially the lemmings who are following the shiny object that Adam Schiff and the rest of the Democrats are throwing out there. So the whole media narrative this past week has been that Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi are making this fair. They've been listening to constituents, and they want to lay down this political cover, especially for their Democratic freshmen in these Trump districts. They want to have this be this open, above-board process going forward, except everything until now has been behind these closed-door secret testimonies down in Adam Schiff's speakeasy. And then literally the day of the vote, they were testifying behind closed doors. They had one down in Adam Schiff's secret star chamber. And then as we look ahead, it's not even clear which of these are going to be public hearings and which of them aren't. I believe there aren't even any hearings that would even possibly be public until November 12th. And even then, some of those are some. Walk us through how this is a complete crock. This is somehow an open, above-board process. And Dave, I need you to really hit this point, why it's so critical that Republicans be able to subpoena witnesses and subpoena evidence, and especially as we talk about the whistleblower.
Yeah, well, a couple things. One is, in the 90s, we had a tremendous amount of public hearings. And when we did do depositions behind closed doors, but, we never told witnesses not to answer. We never instructed Democrat members of Congress that they were not allowed to ask a question. Don't get me wrong, there were areas where we didn't go because of a sitting grand jury, and that particular case Ken Starr or other independent counsels asked us to not publicly make information available that was grand jury testimony. That's perfectly fine. That's not what this is. There is no public discourse here. There is no public hearings. The American people cannot see for themselves exactly what is going on and make their own determination whether this is a witch hunt or if this is real. And so, because I know it's a witch hunt and because I know they're doing everything they can to try to destroy. Look, this is meddling. This is meddling in the 2020 elections. Let's call it what it is. The Democrats cannot beat this president in 2020 with any of their crazed left-wing candidates. They have to do things like this, which is meddle today to try to influence votes a year from now.
And Dave, one other point I want to jump in with here. So what you've laid out here are the places where there's similarities and dissimilarities between 1998 and now. But the one other thing is that when we got into the second half 20 years ago, there very clearly was the opportunity for Democrats to participate, a whole host of things that Trump and Republicans are not allowed to participate in. But one of the keys here, and why I think you made the point that Trump needs to have his killers out there, why this is so important, we're essentially fighting with both hands tied behind our back right now. And until we get in and start punching, and that's why Trump needs all of his allies.
Yes, we have Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and Andy Biggs and Radcliffe and Lee Zeldin. We have a very small group of people who are willing to go to the mattresses, to defend this president. But that's it. Once we get past those names, that's where we are today. I want to, and we need to build our team, and that's why I'm glad you guys are doing this show, and we're able to educate people, because before this, this is just one thing, but it's an important thing. So look, let's get to the whistleblower if we could. I absolutely 100% believe we need to know the identity of the whistleblower, of the second whistleblower, of the third, whatever there is, 1, 2, 3, I don't care. I want to know who they are, and I want to know what they are. I want to know where they're from. And
okay, let me jump in, because I know Jason and both Raheem want to get in on this, Dave, with you. But let me argue the other. That's the whistleblower thing. It's set to protect people. If you do this, you're going to expose this guy to all type of hate and vitriol. The federal laws to protect people. How do you guys argue against that?
Yeah, there's not. Look, whistleblower. Look, the whistleblower statute is not meant to be used as a political tool. I discount all of that because this guy is a shill of Adam Schiff. That is what this is. This is a political operation. This is a campaign to defeat the president, to impeach the president, and all bets are off. You want to make a statement as a whistleblower. You're going to put your name on it, and we're going to make sure that with the microscope we give you a proctology exam, because that's what needs to be done. We are not in a place where we can say, oh, sure, the whistleblower should be afforded the same rights as somebody who is blowing the whistle, on a contract dispute, which is what whistleblower statutes are about, okay? Or something's going on inside the office and I don't want to have my name associated with it because it will affect my employment. Somebody is trying to destroy a presidency. Somebody is trying to, using politics. Look, this is nothing more than a policy dispute by the deep state, using politics as their mechanism to affect change on public policy. That's what this is about. And so we have to put aside all the niceties. They want a war. We're going to bring them one.
Let's also be clear about something. I mean, the whistleblower protection laws in the U.S. are not new. These have existed almost since the beginning of the United States have existed. But the process by which you whistleblow has also been well codified. And the process by which people whistleblow and are whistleblowing on the Trump administration is far and away very different from what we have as well-established procedures for going about this. And there are categories under which abuse of power or wastage of funds or mismanagement or violation of laws and regulations have to be put out there. They have to go through certain processes to get there, and this isn't happening anymore. Firstly, you have the politicization of the whistleblower process. Secondly, you have a complete circumventing of the well-established processes by which you do this. And if that's the way these guys want to do it, if they want to go in front of the media, if you want to go in front of television, and you're changing it, then everything changes.
I hear your case. Let me play devil's advocate.
Play it.
I'll go first to Dave and Jason, then you jump in offer. Okay, so Dave, you said it and he said it. Walk through. What do you mean Adam Schiff has politicized this? What do you mean Adam Schiff has used the whistleblower as a tool? What evidence do you have to back that up?
Well, we know we've seen the evidence that Adam Schiff and his staff were in communication with, and we don't know if advising this whistleblower on the words to use, on how to write this. We need to know everything that Adam Schiff and his staff or any other member or their staff had to do with this whistleblower prior to the complaint being filed. We also know that the Inspector General, who allowed this thing to go forward, also we have to have questions for him, because we know there's evidence that they are connected to some of these Democrat politicians. Look, this has to be done in a very thorough, very serious way by very serious prosecutorial minds who are going to do what the left is doing to us: parse every word, dissect every single thing that this person did and what its intent and what their motives are. The motives is an opportunity here are big questions, and we need those answers.
So, Dave, this is a great point, because there's no such thing as a completely unbiased witness, because everybody has policy perspectives. They have their own political opinions. When you think about the fact, even take a look at the fact that the whistleblower's attorney, Mark Zaid, he's someone who runs a nonprofit law firm called the Whistleblower Aid. I've heard of Farm Aid, I've heard of Live Aid. I've never heard of Whistleblower Aid. This whole thing just sounds like a crock. It's like they're encouraging people to do it. But let's just say, hypothetically, the whistleblower is a holdover from the Obama administration who disagrees with America First foreign policy, who's been very vocal to this point of trying to fight for different policies than what President Trump wants. They're going to have a different perspective. And so when this whistleblower gets out there, to your point, Dave, I want to know, and Steve, this is where I disagree with I know you're playing bad cop here, so you're just trying to get the argument going. Clearly, the whistleblower was aided in this effort. When you're downstairs in the bottom of the EEOB, down at the cafeteria, you're not sitting around looking at the menu and, oh, hey, by the way, U.S. Code 503033K5G, which is literally one of the things that the whistleblower cites. You have a trained lawyer that's working with you and helping you on this outright kneecapping of the president. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that somebody can go out there and again, let's go to the actual whistleblower letter for a moment. The whistleblower letter, he straight out says, I was not a direct witness to most of the events described. I have heard this information from officials. So you know what? I want to find out who on the NSC, who in the EEOB was this whistleblower talking to? Who else was working to put this together? How much did Schiff? How much did majority staff? How much did Mark Zaid? I want to know who put some of these words in the whistleblower's mouth, because clearly this person is not at the central seat. He's hearing things second, third hand and acting like he was there.
Yeah, that's very important. But also what's important is the American people have to understand one thing. We don't care about people's opinions or feelings. Okay? I don't care about their opinions. Their opinions, these witnesses who are coming forward and saying their opinion of things, I don't care. Literally, the President of the United States, no matter who it is, gets to set foreign policy, not anyone sitting listening to a phone call. If the President wants to change foreign policy, it doesn't matter who it is. Okay? It doesn't matter who it is. The president gets to set foreign policy. He can change foreign policy in a phone call. That's the way it is. Okay? That's the way our country was designed. Look, I say if they want to put this out there, I call on the President of the United States to release Barack Obama's phone calls with the mullahs or whoever he spoke to in Iran before the $300 million in cash went on the plane to Iran.
Wow.
Let's listen to those calls. Let's see what quid pro quos were discussed there. Look, this can start and stop anywhere we decide. The president has control of those things. You want to go down this road, not you guys, but if Adam Schiff and company want to go down this road, let's use a defense of what other presidents have done. I say let's go for it.
Yeah, I think
when Dave Bossie goes to war, he goes to war.
That's right.
Hey,
Steve,
last thing, we're going to have a time.
Steve,
We got to let
Steve,
you go, Dave. But group. Yep.
Just to augment Dave's point there, and I mean we mentioned that last week about the Iranian thing and all that, but also something coming back to something Jason said. When a whistleblower goes to Adam Schiff's staff, instead of going directly to an inspector general or anything like that, would you not agree? And I'm aiming this at you, Steve, because you're playing the devil's advocate here. Would you not agree that that is an improper way of whistleblowing?
I think it leads to what you guys are saying. Because of that, I think that gives you the access to go in and get everything. And say, hey, this is not the normal process. This is not the way you're supposed to do it. What happened here? We need every document, every email, every text message, and you need to be grilled because you're trying to, obviously there's something here that you're trying to upend a presidency, and I think that gets back to Dave's point about the politicization. Before we bounce on one thing, Dave. Real Clear Investigations, Paul Sperry, great investigative reporter, put the name of, he believes, the whistleblower out there. Other people, prominent voices like Rush and others have been saying it. Would you mention, do you think it's appropriate to talk about the whistleblower's name when it may be not 100% known right now?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of just throwing names around, but I am a fan of finding out who it is and naming them. There's a difference. So if it is this Eric person, great, let's go for it. I have no problem with that. And the more we find out about this guy, the more it looks like he's a Democrat operative.
That's the break,
Dave,
guys.
Thanks for being on, brother.
Thanks to Dave Bossie, Steve K. Bannon, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam. We'll be right back with another very special guest on War Room Impeachment after this short break.
War Room Impeachment. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. Episode 16 of War Room Impeachment. Broadcasting live here out of the Breitbart Embassy on Capitol Hill. Stephen K. Bannon down the line from New York. It is Monday, the 4th of November, 2019. We're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Want a special thank you to John Fredericks and his whole team for hosting this for us. You can catch up with everything that we do at warroom.org. New site launching this morning. Very exciting. Also, we have a very special guest for you in this segment of the show. Also, very, very well respected, excellent constitutional lawyer on the Republican side, CEO of Trip Scott, Ed Pozzuoli, is going to be joining us very shortly. I want to throw it to Stephen K. Bannon up in New York now. Steve, the conversation we just had with Dave Bossie, I think it's interesting. It's about the whistleblower. It's about the whole process, all of this stuff. What's standing out for you? Just before we bring Ed in, what's standing out for you? And you can use this to bring Ed in amongst the talk from this weekend. What the president has been tweeting yesterday, this morning, and how that pertains to the conversation over the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, well, this is why I think it was important. Ed did Fox and Friends this morning. He just got off Brian Kilmeade. It's this whole thing, as you and Jason and I have talked about. You see two different angles of attack. One is the president. The phone call's perfect. I didn't do anything wrong. Today it's we don't need any witnesses. Just read the transcript. That's obviously the line of attack I took yesterday on Maria Bartiromo. And then there's this other that Reince mentioned on the show on Friday. It picked up momentum over the weekend, and a bunch of stories on the Hill and Politico about how some of the senators, and that's between this, was there quid pro quo or about intention and mens rea, and that's what I want to have as soon as Ed's on, to jump in what he put on Fox and Friends. I thought it was so enlightening today that we actually reached out and asked Ed to come on the show.
I believe we have Ed. Ed, can you hear us?
I can.
Fantastic. Ed, Steve, go right ahead.
Yeah, so Ed, can you walk through this whole debate that's now taking place over the weekend of, President Trump say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong, the phone call's perfect, there was no quid pro quo, versus this other, and Reince brought it up in the show on Friday, it's picked up momentum over the weekend of this other alternative of there was no intention. Can you walk the audience through what's the difference, why does it make a big deal, why is it a big deal, and where do you think this thing comes down?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, on quid pro quo. There's no quid pro quo here because one, the funding came through. There was no issue with that. So there's the part of the threat is gone and never was real. And the president of Ukraine has already said that he never even knew it was held up. So there's no threat on any of that. So there's no. The second part of the quid pro quo wasn't there, and the first part isn't there.
Hold it, Ed.
Sure.
They have smart lawyers on their side. Why are they arguing and putting it all on the line for the Democratic Party? Because if this blows up in their face, it'll be horrific. Why are they arguing it is a quid pro quo?
They're arguing it because it's a political move. It's not a legal move, Steve. And ultimately, they want to keep this narrative up. Let's understand that from the beginning, you and I both agree that from the moment Donald Trump got elected, they were looking for a reason to impeach him. They were in search. They had their person in sights. They knew what they wanted to do. They were just looking for a set of facts to fit the crime. So, they went by the maxim that we're going to hang them today and then we're going to try them tomorrow. I mean, that's what happened. So they're looking for a set of facts that somehow can keep this argument alive because it's political. Then they put it down in the basement of the Capitol and kept it secret, and they only skimmed the top of leaking whatever bad information they thought was bad from a public perception standpoint to drive poll numbers. That's the only reason. You and I both know that. Legally, there's no quid pro quo here, one. And then secondly, it goes back to your mens rea issue. What was the president's intention? And so was the president's intention to hold something over Ukraine's head to force them to do something? Well, I would say the following. Was it a bad intention for purposes of gaining some personal use out of this? And I would say no. I'll tell you why. Because there are two legitimate reasons why the President of the United States could be doing this. One is to clean the swamp up. I think that's been a major theme of this president. And the second is, if you're the President of the United States dealing with the President of Ukraine, and part and parcel of your relationship was a $600,000 payment to the former vice president's son, and that was part and parcel of the relationship with Ukraine in a big way. And you cannot pinpoint why a gas and oil company would pay Hunter Biden to be on the board and pay him $600,000 without good reason. All you have to conclude is, without any other reason, because he's not an expert in anything, did he bring anything to the table for that $600,000? It was simply to curry favor with the then sitting vice president. If that was the case, that is a contextual understanding of what the relationship was between significant players in Ukraine and Ukraine government and the United States under the previous administration, and that, my friend, is legitimate.
Ed, this is Jason Miller. I completely agree with you here. And when we talk, one of the things we've been talking about on the show is the elevator pitch. If you're someone who's not a lawyer, you're someone who's not in politics every day, you're trying to make sense of everything that's going on. When it's easy to push back on this and say, since when is rooting out corruption some sort of quid pro quo? And that's just a complete joke. But I think also, too, when the president says, let's debate this on the facts, let's debate this on the merits, I think he's onto something here from the messaging perspective. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I am an expert in the messaging field. Keep in mind from the call transcript, and I went back and read it again last night, and keep in mind that it was Zelensky who brought up Javelin missiles. It was Zelensky who brought up literally that he wants to drain the swamp. He's the one who brought these points up because Ukraine is one of the single most corrupt countries on the planet. There's a reason why the IMF is holding up their funding as we speak. And This is a massive point of consternation between our nation and theirs.
Yep, and I agree. And if you want an elevator speech inside of a foreign relationship, this is not you and I talking about friends and you asking me for you to borrow $5. This is a conversation between two governments, and there is no personal. issue here. There's only self-interest. The self-interest of the United States and the self-interest of Ukraine, and the conversation between the President of the United States and the President of Ukraine is something. There is always something. We provide foreign aid to governments to modify behavior or to impact behavior all day long. And so this idea that corruption, which is a major problem in the Ukraine, needs to be curbed and addressed is a very big deal. And you know, I'm from Florida, so if you want an example of a corrupt government, I mean, look at like Haiti. I mean, so we can't even send money directly to the government there because of the corruption. So corruption inside of an intergovernmental, one government to another relationship is a very important thing.
So, Ed, before we let you go, we've been talking about the whistleblower. Do you think the whistleblower is fair game, given your understanding of federal law about the whistleblower and what appears to be the facts here? Do you think the whistleblower is fair game to be brought in, to be questioned, to have his name exposed, to go through every email? Where do you stand with the whistleblower?
Well, there's a difference. Steve, whistleblower has certain protections, legally speaking, in a legal proceeding. Impeachment is a political proceeding, period, end of story. And particularly the way the Democrats are trying to pull it off, because it's uniquely, you know, and partisan right down the line. I mean, even though Nancy Pelosi said impeachment shouldn't be partisan, it is along partisan lines. You saw the vote the other day. So impeachment is a political process and the power of Congress. And so the whistleblower, in my view, does not enjoy the same protections, Steve.
Wow.
Ed, thank you very much. Ed Pozzuoli, he's going to be on many, many times in the weeks ahead. We've asked him to help us out here in legal analysis. Ed, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know you've had a crazy day with Fox and Kill Media, and you're doing media all day in New York, but thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, guys, I know we're burning daylight here. I want to go back to the whistleblower for a second. Big a deal, Jason, do you think this is to, and Raheem, jump in here, to start drilling down and deconstructing everything, every movement, every contact, every relationship, given what Bossie and Pozzuoli are saying?
I mean, this is everything. I mean, this goes to the fact that there were at least a dozen folks, I'm not sure how many completely, that knew about this call, that were involved in the call, career staff, people that were there. But this whistleblower, to take this enormous step to go and collude with Adam Schiff and his committee folks to go and get this Farm Aid, Live Aid, Whistleblower Aid, Mark Zaid attorney to come in and help him put this thing together. I mean, this goes to the point that this is a foreign policy disagreement between unelected bureaucrats and President Trump, and they're using it to specifically try to undermine his foreign policy efforts, try to undermine the chain of command. And again, there is no such thing as a completely unbiased person. People see things from where they sit. And if this person has a Democratic history, if this person was proud to be a part of the Obama administration, if this person flat out disagrees with everything President Trump says on the foreign policy front, we deserve to know that. We deserve to know the full motivations here, and President Trump deserves to be able to face his accuser.
Yeah, I think, Steve, and we want to get to the clip of you on Fox News yesterday as well. I think a very compelling appearance there from Stephen K.
Let's go ahead and if we got it.
I said the magic word. He knows what to pivot.
Let it rip, baby.
Let's producer Kira. Let's play that clip of Stephen K. Bannon on Fox News yesterday. We'll wait
so
for,
if Schiff is going to sit there and argue that Joe Biden is above the law, Hunter Biden is above the law, the Bidens have to be called. Joe Biden, I tell you, Joe Biden is a hand grenade and Hunter Biden's the pin. And when that pin gets pulled, the shrapnel is going to blow back all over the Democratic establishment.
Wow, but there's even more than that. I mean, we're going to speak with Congressman Jim Jordan coming up. We're going to speak with Michael Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell, and Lee Smith, who wrote the book, The Plot Against the President. We've got a timeline here that shows money and ideas came from Ukraine to go into that dossier. Why is the president not allowed to ask, hey, what went on in the 2016 election? We've got this timeline showing General Flynn and showing George Papadopoulos talking about this dossier that came from Ukraine. So what's wrong with that?
This is why the president's saying substance, and granularity. Let's have transparency. Let's get all the facts on the table. The American people are just coming to this story. They've had selective leaks that have actually gotten these numbers numbers where they are today. And I think the high water mark is going to be the day Matt Gaetz went down to that skiff.
Yeah.
And here's what we're going to see. As the American people see more information, as the American people understand, and you got to read Peter Schweitzer's book, Secret Empires, which really kicks this off, not about Joe Biden running for president, not about Joe Biden ever having another political office, but Joe Biden as the epitome of American crony capitalism and corruption in his dealings, not just with the Ukraine, but China. We have to get into China and see how Joe Biden's been compromised and how his son garnered wealth from the Chinese Communist Party.
Steve, pretty powerful stuff. I think the big standout line.
That shows you. Jason always tells me, Raheem, to drink 2 Red Bulls before I go on.
I think honestly, I think it was the extra hour in bed.
I was chewing the scenery a little bit there, wasn't I?
Steve, tell us what you mean. Joe Biden is the hand grenade. Hunter Biden is the pin.
Well, I think that I believe that they should be called as witnesses, and I think when Hunter Biden is called as a witness in a public hearing, I think when Hunter Biden's called as a witness and his father's called as a witness under oath, I think Hunter Biden is going to, Joe Biden, I think is going to explode. And what I mean is all the information about his crony capitalism. Hunter Biden's the pin. You get Hunter Biden under oath, and he will. I think he will. The information that he will give will essentially, put the father in a very tough situation. And I think it's going to be an explosion. I think the Democrats ought to be asking this question themselves.
Of course, the big hashtag that was trending a couple of weeks ago, the Where's Hunter and the T-shirts and everything that went along with it. Is Adam Schiff really going to allow Republicans to even get close to Hunter Biden?
I mean, Jason, that's why they have this. That's why we got Bossie on here earlier. The process they've got, essentially the Republicans have to go as supplicants to get witnesses. Correct, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's zero chance that we're going to be able to bring Hunter Biden. We should be able to. We should be able to bring Joe Biden in. And again, going back to yesterday, we discussed this, the PBS interview with Biden from Friday night, where Biden said he didn't know his son was on the board of Burisma. I mean, he didn't know that his son was making between 50 and 83 grand a month. He didn't know this when he and the board member of Burisma and Hunter all went golfing back in 2014. That was really just an excuse for Raheem to bring up Nickelback again, which is one of his favorite groups. But
I've seen Nickelback live, by the way. I stand by it.
Did you get a concert tee? Okay, I don't get too far.
Where's Hunter tee?
Where's Hunter? I got it too. But no, but Steve, this is the exact point that this is, since when is rooting out corruption some sort of quid pro quo? And also, too, there's one other point here. Not only is it rooting out this foreign corruption, what's going on in Ukraine, and the fact the place is a complete disaster. I think that's probably a nice way to go and put it. I mean, I'm glad that they're our allies, but they have a long ways to go here. But let's not forget the fact that there was this foreign election interference in 2016. A lot of signs raised some very serious questions about the role of Ukrainians in that. And we should be getting to the bottom of any potential foreign election interference in 2016. And many of the mainstream media are so triggered and so anti-Trump that they get mad at President Trump when he's not going aggressively enough on Russia, but then they get mad at him because he is going aggressively or is raising any interference from Ukraine. You can't have it both ways, folks.
Well, okay, but therefore the question is raised, and contrarians will raise the question, if the president really did have these concerns, why not instigate an investigation into this from within the United States rather than seeing what was going on and having Ukraine investigate what's going on, or having China investigate what's going on from within China? Why not do it from here on U.S. soil?
Well, and that's one of the points, and this is important, devil's always in the details. When you look at the transcript, keep in mind, Zelensky is the one who brings up not just this issue of corruption, but he brings up the issue of multiple investigations. This is a very important point that I myself missed this the first time or second time or third time that I went and went through it. I mean, he says, quote, "I also plan to surround myself with great people in addition to that investigation. I guarantee as the president of Ukraine that all the investigations will be done openly and candidly." So there are a whole boatload of investigations going on. We don't necessarily know them. Keep in mind, President Trump is the one who brought up Attorney General Barr. It was Zelensky who brought up Mayor Giuliani. So President Trump is clearly saying there are a lot of investigations here. We need to get to the bottom of rooting out any corruption, and that's the job of the president.
Wait, are you telling me that the precedent that was set by Joe Biden when he lent on the Ukrainian government over that $1 billion in effective aid had perhaps led Zelensky to think he was the one that had to bring all these things up and prove to the U.S. that if the U.S. was providing $391 million in assistance, that he had to show that he was rooting out corruption?
Yeah, and Joe Biden was withholding $1 billion to get a prosecutor fired, and he bragged about it. He was bragging, I'm going to get the son of a bitch. And he's out there, sorry for the family-friendly language there, not family-friendly language, but Joe Biden's the one who drove this.
Steve.
We got a few minutes left. Raheem, let's go through who was supposed to testify today, and what does that tell us about where Schiff is going in this investigation?
Right. Well, of course, the big narrative that the media is going to push this week is the no-shows. The people that were being called to testify in closed session in the Star Chamber all this week. Today was set to be John Eisenberg, the Deputy Counsel to the President for National Security Affairs and Legal Advisor to the National Security Council. You also had Robert Blair, Assistant to the President and Senior Advisor to the Acting Chief of Staff. Michael Ellis, Senior Associate Counsel to the President and Deputy Legal Advisor to the National Security Council, and Brian McCormack, Associate Director for Natural Resources, Energy and Science in the Office of Management and Budget. It goes on, we go on like this week. Tuesday, Wells Griffith, Special Assistant to the President. Wednesday, Ulrich Breckpool, Rick Perry, David Hale. And Thursday, we're still waiting to see if this one happens, former National Security Advisor John Bolton.
So you see, and by the way, all those, Jason, I take it, are not gonna be there.
Yeah, and this goes right to the point that we discussed, I think, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of last week, saying that this was all part of the Nancy Pelosi comms director plan. And again, we tip our hat where credit is due. They're lining this up because, folks, Congress is out of session this week. They're all back home in their districts.
Yeah, how do you call people when you're out of session?
Right, exactly. So who's here? I mean, it would be interesting. I think, Raheem, you made this point the other day. What would happen if, say, Blair, for example, showed up and hey guys, I'm here, ready to testify, and you got Capitol Hill staffers, and all the casual attire and doing recess hours and all this. But so all the members of Congress, 435 members of Congress, they're all back in their districts. Yeah. They're all, doing the meet and greets and shaking hands and all of that. There's no one even here. They're lining this up because they know the media is going to chase this flashy object and say, Trump administration folks will no-show as if there's some sort of obstruction, and they'll try to weave that into a broader narrative of obstructing, which it all fits under presidential privilege, and there's no reason they should go. And it's anyone who would even. Yeah.
What happens the first hearing on the Kupperman argument about separation of powers is, I think it's scheduled on December 10th, is what I saw. What happens to Schiff if all of these other witnesses now are going to fall underneath this? What does he have? What is he going to go with? Is he going to wait because the first hearing is not till the 10th of December? That means it's going to go into the spring, into the summer, till it gets argued to the Supreme Court or maybe later, right? Because it's a major separation of powers case. What happens to Schiff when Pompeo and Bolton, everybody falls under that?
Well, they're going to keep this thing going as long as they can because Democrats don't want to spend this time right now talking about their presidential candidates. And you take a look at polling that was out today. CNN's been running it around the clock with some pretty rough news for Democrats. We don't have much time, so I can't break down all the numbers. But the fact of the matter is, even right now, where you'd think that President Trump has had one of his roughest months ever, he's been getting pummeled. Kind of reminds me a little bit of August of 2016 with the avalanche of news and everything coming forward. It shows right now, worst case scenario, President Trump is dead even in Michigan. He's just slightly off of Biden in Pennsylvania, in a couple of these key states. I mean, this whole thing is not working well, and the Democratic candidates, quite frankly, are not stunners. This thing's going to go for months and months, and at a certain point, Adam Schiff is going to have to pivot and give that report to Jerry Nadler Judiciary Committee to push forward on these articles of impeachment, and they're going to be hiding behind the testimony that they took in secret, unconstitutional manner in this last month and a half or so.
Raheem, you want to take us home here? I know we only got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, we've got about a minute left on the show, and it's I am left to tell everyone warroom.org, brand new site up this morning, which means not just the podcast there, we're also going to be pulling all the important stories about impeachment. We will be your one-stop shop for everything impeachment related. Make sure you're clicking, favoriting, bookmarking, tweeting, Facebooking. Tell your friends and family, www.warroom.org. We've been getting some great feedback on iTunes, on Google Play, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on SoundCloud, all of the things. We're very grateful, of course, to the John Fredericks Radio Network for hosting us here as well. We'll be back tomorrow with a episode 17 of War Room Impeachment. More great guests for you guys all this week. Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon down the line in New York. We're very grateful to have you all with us. Make sure you're following at War Room on Twitter as well. That's live tweeting of the show and all the links, everything we're reading, everything you need to know about impeachment, warroom.org.